Halo semuanya. Halo, welcome back all. Tidak terasa sesi break time 45 menit telah berlalu. Dan masih ada rangkaian-rangkaian agenda. Biar tidak usah membuang-buang waktu, ya langsung saja kita ke agenda selanjutnya, yaitu sesi penyampaian materi, Innovation in the Digital Era. Why is blockchain technology one of the key start technology in 2022 oleh Mr. Lim Hui. Are you ready, Mr. Lim?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Lim, so please, this time is yours.
Great. Do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, so a very good morning, afternoon to everyone. And I guess in the next session that I'll be covering, it's really about the blockchain as well as the future of blockchain. And over the course of the next 40 minutes or so, hopefully I can give a little bit of insight into one core technologies that I personally feel it's going to impact the world greatly. I'm going to organize my sharing into 3 different parts. The first part is on a high level, very much in terms of technology trends, what has happened before and what the future might bring. The second, we'll be deep diving a little bit into blockchain and why would this technology be so amazing. And lastly, I'll be covering a little bit on some of the key trends that we might find interesting, both currently as well as in the future. So jumping very quickly into it, sometimes for us to look into the future, we might need to take one step back to look at the past. And the past can sometimes tell us a lot of things about what is to come, because many a time history always repeats itself. And if we take a study of the last 200 years or so, we realize that every single time there is a technology breakthrough, every single time that there is a technology advancement, what's interesting is that there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of people make money, but at the same time, there are a lot of companies and people who become irrelevant. There are a lot of companies and people who become displaced from what they actually do. One of the key things that we can realize is that as we come a little bit closer to our timeline, not only are technology disruptions becoming faster and faster, but more so, a lot of the disruptions are creating more impact towards the users themselves. Another study that we look at is that in addition to the amount of technology disruptions, what we want to take a look at is at the number of people who are actually adopting these technologies over time. And taking a study of the amount of time it takes 25% of the US population to adopt technology, it's quite interesting to see that it took more than 46 years for 25% of the US population to adopt electricity. The personal computer, probably about 16 years. And more recently, we have games like Pokemon Go, which just took less than 19 days for the entire 25% of the US population to adopt. What this tells us is that not only are technology disruptions becoming faster and faster, but more so, the adoption of these technologies are accelerating in terms of the number of people that are adopting that. You might be able to create an application and an app, and maybe in less than 30 days, you might become a multi-billionaire, very much because your application has just rose through the rankings in terms of number of people adopting it. And one of the last studies that we actually studied on was over the course of the last 20 years. If we look at the number of internet giants, and we take a time series between 1998 and over a 5-year period, all the way till 2018, the top 20 web giants that's out there globally. And we're able to notice that every single 5 years, more than 30% of the companies actually change hands in terms of the top 20 companies. And more so, over the course of the last 20 years, there's less than 3 companies that's still within the top 20 list after 20 years itself. But interestingly so, as we come closer to our timeline, more and more companies are continuing to remain within the top 20 list. What this also tells us is that we never know what's going to happen over the course of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and more so that we have a chance to grow a company very much towards a large internet giant as well. So taking a look very much over history, over the last 20 years or 200 years, we pick off a couple of interesting facts. But the question to really ask is, what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, or 20 over years? And taking one step back, we today are really in an era of data explosion. An interesting fact is 90% of the world's data was created just in the last 3 years. But can you imagine, with so much data being created over just the last 3 years, how much more data will then be created over the next 5, 10 years or more? The challenge with such accelerating growth is that a lot of companies are not equipped well to be able to handle such big growth. In fact, there are a lot of people who might not even know that there's such a large growth in this specific area itself. The challenge then is that there are 3 core areas that a lot of companies might not be able to handle this that well. And what would be the 3 areas that are of significance? Firstly, we today are living in an increasingly less trustful world. There's more than $600 billion that was lost to online fraud and scams just in the year 2017. And we today are living as well in an increasingly noisier world where every single second, every single person is creating 1.7 megabytes worth of data, multiplied by the total number of people. You can then imagine why there's so much data that's been created over the last 3 years. And we today are living in an increasingly insecure world where there was an increase of more than 600% in cyber attacks just in 2017, with an estimated more than $6 trillion lost annually in 2021 itself. And if we were to put this to numbers, how would this actually impact businesses? If we talk about impacting to businesses for failing to protect or businesses who fail to utilize data, if we put this into numbers, in the areas of just having 1 million data records lost, that's on average more than $40 million lost in business. And a huge interesting fact is that the average time to detect and contain a breach or leak is actually 365 days, approximately 200 days to find out that there is a breach, and more than 165 days to be able to rectify and to be able to contain the breach. Can you imagine more than 1 year where your sensitive data is actually out there floating the hands of people who shouldn't be having it? And this is not just for small companies. This data set is actually from a survey that was done on Fortune 500 companies through a sampling of companies that actually had information being leaked and information being hacked. And for listed companies, the average loss in value, it's more than 7% when they disclose that they actually have a data breach. For a company that is $1 billion, that's a huge amount in terms of more than $70 million worth of market value lost just upon a specific data breach. And for companies who actually fail to fully optimize and utilize their data, they're looking at more than a 50 to 25% lost in opportunities or value that they can actually maximize from data itself. So with these core problems that we face, the question then asked is, what can we do? And what will be technologies that will primarily impact the space moving forward? I personally think that the 3 core technologies of blockchain, AI, and cybersecurity would be 3 core technologies that will impact the world moving forward. Blockchain very much for data trust, AI for clarity, and cybersecurity for security as well as peace of mind. And although these 3 core technologies are huge technologies by itself, I personally believe that all 3 core technologies are all integrated and integral towards a company that wishes to future-proof themselves. The question, of course, is this. Today, I might have blockchain and have trusted data, but if I have no means of being able to utilize my data to find out what would be the most impact that I'm able to use my data for, then the data would not be that useful. Or if today I have a very strong business intelligence or AI engine, and I'm able to sieve out all the sensitive data and impactful data, but I'm not able to protect it that well, and I get my data leaked or I get my data hacked, then essentially I'll be giving up all the value of the data that I've collected over the years itself. So I personally believe that blockchain, AI, and cybersecurity are all integral towards a company that has a future-proof plan to be able to digitally transform and get themselves relevant and ready for the future. The topic today, however, will be covering on the core area of blockchain. We won't have enough time to cover every aspect, but hopefully we're able to give some forms of insights into one of the core technologies that I personally am most passionate about. So jumping into the areas of blockchain in 2022 and beyond, I'll first be covering on why I think blockchain might create such a big impact within the space, followed by key trends in the future. And when I talk about blockchain being impactful, I'll be covering on three core topics. The topics surrounding trust, security, as well as control. So just about 2 years back, I was doing a TEDx in Thailand, and this was one of the items that I was very much covering on the topic of will blockchain change the world. And we start off very much in the areas of trust. An interesting question, right, that everyone can ask themselves is, would you trust a robot more, or would you trust a human being more? And that's a fundamental question that will become more and more relevant moving forward. Because the question then is that we will be interacting with robots, from the simplest forms of chatbots to more sophisticated forms of AIs and humanoids in the years to come. So the question asks yourself, and in your head, would you actually trust a robot more, or would you trust a human being more? And of course, that's very much contextual, right? Very much trusting a chatbot to give me accurate directions, or a driverless vehicle to bring me from point A to point B, or trusting a machine to do surgery on myself, or a robot to take care of your newborn child. The question then asked is, would you trust a robot more or a human being more? And very interestingly, a survey that was being done in the United States was that more than 75% of the workforce actually trust a robot more than your manager. And that was being done in so-called a workplace context in a very large technology firm that's operating out of the United States. So keep that in mind, because the question then, as mentioned, is very much contextual. But moving forward, more and more of us will be interacting with robots more in the future. And of course, surrounding the topic of trust, trust naturally leads to our next topic of agreements. And in times in antiquity, what essentially happened is that we make an agreement through a nod of a head or a gentleman's handshake. And of course, over time, we became more educated and we depended on legal contracts. And the question then to ask is, what then is the future of agreements? If agreements or legal contracts could have worked so well, then we wouldn't have so many legal cases and legal disputes out there in the world today. So one of the areas that blockchain can really contribute towards areas of trust as well as agreements is in areas of what we term as programmable contracts or smart contracts, where we are now not just having a verbal agreement or having a written agreement where we write the legal terms into the contract and we go to a court of law to basically identify who's right or who's wrong. By then you'll be too late, because that is trying to recruit back what has already happened. What the future of contracts or agreement might bring forth is literally writing the terms into the code itself, that if something happens, something will immediately happen, or if something doesn't happen, something else won't happen. If you were to receive your goods, naturally, from a coded model, integrated with all the different systems, the funds that you expected to receive should be dispersed to you because you have received your goods in proper condition and of the likes. And this is one of the massive areas that blockchain would be able to provide value in. And coming a little bit closer towards our everyday lives, what would be the other areas that blockchain is able to bring forth in the areas of trust? And every single day we eat, every single day we will be faced with decisions of what choice of food or drinks that we would like to have. And today, maybe we decide to eat organic food. Or today we might have a nice glass of wine or whiskey, and states that's from a specific region in Spain or France, Australia, or the likes. How do we really know that this food that's being placed in front of us is actually really from the place that it states it is? Or that glass of whiskey or wine, it actually comes from a specific region that it states it is from. And that's where blockchain can bring forth massive amount of value through its ability for traceability as well as provenance, literally identifying where the original source of food came from, and through the supply chain, every single time it changed hands, that it would be able to have a hash, or it's able to track that specific movement all the way from farm to fork. From a consumer perspective, he might just be able to go to and scan a specific QR code and identify the entire supply chain journey of where the food was from, where he has been, and how he has ended up onto the plate that's in front of him. Let's jump next into the next topic, very much in areas of cybersecurity, and we talk about a data explosion era that we are today living in. And more so with that amount of data that's actually out there, more so security becomes a very big component. And we today really am living in a jungle in the data world, because we never know every single step that we take, every single click that we click on a specific website or email or application, would your sensitive data actually be leaked out there? Interesting fact, for Facebook, which had a breach a number of years back, they will fine about approximately $5 billion for a data set of maybe about 2.7 billion people. And that equates to approximately about $1, $2 US per person for data breach. And similarly, a number of years back, for British Airways, they will fine $250 million for approximately 500,000 people that they had a data breach in. And that equates to approximately about $500 per user. Would the data set that you actually have on Facebook be any less valuable than the data set that you have from British Airways itself? Or how would you actually value that data that actually has been leaked? How do you actually put a dollar value onto the data that actually has been leaked out to space? And for organizations that has all your data itself, then how then do you actually protect yourself? So one of the areas that blockchain can really bring forth that's quite interesting, that would be able to better protect your information and data in the future, it's very much on how blockchain would be able to, in a similar model, be encrypted, have it fragmented and distributed. And what I mean very high level on that is that today, imagine you have a treasure map. And the problem is that eons ago, they actually split the treasure map to maybe 10 different pirates and get the pirates to go to different parts of the world. The problem with that, of course, is that if one of the pirates grows to old age or has an accident, literally the treasure map cannot be placed together. Now, what happens then is that we today, in the new age and world, it's able to take a treasure map. We encrypt it, we duplicate it a couple of times, we split it up, and we store it in 10 different locations, with each location having maybe 3 parts of a similar treasure map or a different treasure map. So in essence, what this means is that even if a hacker were to find one of the pirates, he would only be able to find 3 parts of a treasure map, which might be from the same or from different treasure maps. And in order for him to really be able to piece the treasure map together, not only would he need to find all the 10 other pirates, put a jigsaw puzzle of 30 different parts together, decrypt it, and eventually find that information. So the value that is being brought forth over here is that even if hackers were to hack your servers or to identify where your information is being stored, the way that the data now is being encrypted and split up like a jigsaw puzzle and stored in different places would make it really difficult for a specific hacker to be able to recreate the original data that was stored there. And this is one of the key values that blockchain would be able to bring forth in terms of not only having that forms of security, but at the same time to ensure that your data is safe in a private model. And very much jumping to the next item, very much in areas of control. The question asked really over here is that, is your data actually yours? And that's an interesting fact, right? Because today we create so much data. Whether we take a video, we put it up onto Google Photos, or we create a specific video and upload it onto YouTube. Or today we have our Fitbit or Garmin that actually contains all the information and sensitive information about how much exercise we do, our heart rates, our resting heart rates, how much we sleep, and things of the likes. The question really asked is that, is your data really yours? And there is a large group of people that are actually really concerned on whether the data actually belongs to them or whether the data is actually utilized very much for other companies for them to actually monetize and the likes. And fundamentally, the issue over here is that there are already quite a number of companies out there that's actually utilizing your data. Whether is it from credit card companies that's actually utilizing specific forms of data and reselling that information to other people, or in the likes of Google that actually monetizes upon the data that you actually have and utilizes advertising revenue to be able to actually reach out to you. From a separate perspective, which I'll cover a little bit later as well, which is actually interesting, is that today we are not able to monetize our data ourselves, even though the data belongs to us. But essentially, a lot of companies are already monetizing the data sets and activity sets that we're actually utilizing. Moving forward then, in terms of data ethics or in terms of ownership of data, the question to ask really is who should control your data? Where should they use the data? Why should they control data? What, when, and how? And bringing it back very much to blockchain, one of the key things that we move forward into the spaces of even what we term as Web 3.0, it's where we are able now to be able to create a digital identity. And with that specific digital identity, all the different data interactions that we have with other applications or with other organizations or other groups of people, we are able to then aggregate all the different types of data into our digital persona or digital identity, and then decide who would have access towards that specific data set. And more so, if you would like to monetize your data set, other people would then monetize it, yet at the same time have a means of bringing back some forms of the monetization to yourself itself. So one of the questions then to ask is that who should really control your data? So in the areas of three core areas of trust, of security, as well as control, that's one of the key things that I think blockchain would very much be able to bring forth in terms of core value, where today at the areas of trust, we're living in very much a less trustful society. And in security, we today are living in an increasingly unsecured world. And in areas of control, we are today living in a data world of more uncontrollable times. And these three core areas is what I believe that blockchain would be able to bring forth as a key value. And now let's jump very much to a lighter topic of what the future might hold in areas of blockchain and cryptocurrency. And many a time, we won't be able to really delineate that when people talk generically about blockchain and cryptocurrency. But the fundamental fact is that it's two very different things, right? And fundamentally, one of the key things that cryptocurrency really brought forth the world is the amazing technology of blockchain itself. And let me cover a little bit on what might be some of the potential trends of blockchain and cryptocurrency moving forward. So in the next segment, I'll be very much talking about two key different areas of blockchain as well as cryptocurrency, and eventually I'll look at how both of them would converge together itself. Looking specifically at the market trends of blockchain itself, it's a space that's growing tremendously. And not only today is blockchain utilized in many different facets and many different industries, it became a very large initiative by a lot of global governments to actually implement blockchain into their core infrastructure due to the value that blockchain is able to bring forth of data immutability or permanence, as well as traceability and automation in areas of smart contracts and being able to remove very much the middleman. So if we see the trends of blockchain being adopted over the course of previously the last number of years, as well as what's upcoming over the course of the next number of years, we actually see that huge amount of trend from the top left-hand graph of just in 2017 of 4 billion, very much to 2030 of about 12 years, growing to a market size of more than 3.1 trillion. And this is really a space to look out for, because it's going to be technology that would really change multiple different industries. And if you look at the bottom left-hand graph, we're able to see that there's more than 202 blockchain initiatives that's driven by government-related projects in more than 45 different countries. And this was data literally taken like more than 3 years ago. Imagine more so now, the number of technologies and initiatives that governments has taken within the blockchain space. And for industries that are mostly impacted by blockchain itself, we're able to see on the bottom right-hand graph, the number of industries concentration that has been adopting blockchain technologies over the course of the few different industries, with banking and capital markets being one of the largest, followed by governments, insurance, and the rest. Still having finance having a very large component of the implementations of blockchain itself. And we jump next towards what we see in front of us, where if we were to match two different criteria of the value of blockchain, as well as the feasibility of implementation of blockchain into a few key different industries. The left diagram showing us the actual value that blockchain can bring forth towards a few different industries, and the right diagram showing us the feasibility of being able to implement blockchain technologies into the few different industries. And if you match both up, we would then see the few industries that will most be impacted and most likely be able to implement blockchain technologies into their use case. And we are going to see more often than not, very much industries like the financial services, healthcare, property, and the public sector being some of the core industries that will most likely be highly impacted. And we talk about the future of what blockchain can bring forth then. And if we were to really classify into three core areas, we'll be talking very much about areas of the future of identity, the future of cities, and the future of money. And Estonia being one of the first countries that offer e-residency, where they literally move towards digital identity, as well as digital being their first push towards the entire government infrastructure and how people relate to each other, whether it's from identity to signing towards documentation and things of the likes. So bringing forth the core value of blockchain, we are able to look at what the potential of the future of identities can bring forth to us. And if we talk about the future of identities, what would be the future of identities in this particular space? Because today, we're not living just in a physical world. We're also very much living in a digital world. And more so moving forward, even what people term as the Metaverse and of the likes. And digital identities today are becoming more and more real, fundamentally because of the digital assets that we have around us, whether it's from digital art, towards owning digital currency, towards having your representation of your ownership of your house, your title deeds, or things that you have created like music, or even writing a book, or certain forms of content, right, being relevant. So we look at digital identities as a future where not only today are you so-called the citizen of a specific country, right? People start talking about self-sovereign identity, or SSI, where individuals would be able to control the identity as well as the data sets that's very much related to them. And moving to the next step, of course, in the areas of digital citizenship, as well as in the areas of digital personas. When we talk about e-commerce, having an e-commerce store on eBay being one persona, having your Instagram or your Facebook or your LinkedIn, all having different types of digital personas. And moving forward, how do you then integrate or even keep everything separated, being able to interact with the digital space itself? And looking at the second aspect of the future of cities, we talk about digital governments, digital societies, as well as digital economy, where everything would then be moved online. Where today, especially even in Singapore, over the just course of the last 1 or 2 years, with, of course, our national NRIC or our identity card, that now we're able to utilize an application to be able to have everything interacted, or majority of our interfaces interacted with our digital identity itself. More and more so moving forward, we are looking at how Singapore is driving towards a smart city and looking towards how they're able to aggregate and integrate everything from a digital interface. And from a third aspect, when we talk about the future of money, we see a lot of movements from a global scale, such as a number of years back in the United States, we have Facebook Libra project that's very much ran by Facebook and originated from them, that wanted to create a global payment wallet. And of course, unfortunately, or fortunately, the US so-called Senate as well has stepped in very much to say that that's something that they had major concerns on. And in fact, if the project today has not really taken off. Or in China itself, that on the opposite hand has faced quite a number of success when they actually launched their central bank digital currency, as well as their blockchain services network that allowed the entire country to be linked towards digital currency, as well as having an interface where they're able to link towards their BSN network, and eventually to have data interoperability as well as data mobility. And of course, in Singapore, over the last number of years, we have Project Ubin that looks very much into the financial area, and previously, very much, they've announced before that we are ready to actually launch our own digital currency that represents Singapore dollars. It's just whether we would like to turn on the switch or not. So very much that's on the areas of the trends of blockchain, but let's jump into what might be some of the trends on the opposite end of cryptocurrency or the digital asset economy. And what's interesting is that we are really seeing a massive uptake of digital assets or cryptocurrency over the last number of years. Just comparing of the year of 2021 and before, there's more than a 689% increase in the amount of trading volume. And this is just on the number of exchanges that are centralized and cryptocurrency exchanges that are centralized, and the data sets that we actually have. That's more than 14 trillion US dollars worth of trading volume just in the year 2021. And with more and close to a 700% increase, imagine how much more room and acceleration that this particular space will be going towards in the years to come. For decentralized crypto exchanges, that's more than 100 billion, which is a really, really small number. But the potential of number of people that will be potentially utilizing it in the future is massive, massive amounts of potential to come. And talking about cryptocurrency, one of the key things that really revolve around it is the areas of regulation. And we split it to a few different key areas or countries of regulation. We see why would cryptocurrency in the future become something that's what we term as staple, or something that would be highly prevalent to a large group of people, is we see a large uptake from a regulatory perspective, not just from one country, but a movement from multiple different countries. Just not too long back in Singapore, we have released a number of regulations surrounding the digital payments token, around digital payments token services, whether it's it from our PSA, which is our Payment Services Act, to RMO for representing market operators licenses for exchanges, or VASP for virtual asset service providers. The regulation around cryptocurrency is becoming clearer and clearer. And what this also means is that it's becoming more and more so a mainstay. In areas of Hong Kong, they're looking very much to better regulate it as well. In areas of stable coins, in areas of how cryptocurrency would be interacting and for service providers within the Hong Kong space. And very, very much more recently, just in Indonesia itself, areas of cryptocurrency, OJK, has very much been looking into the taxation and of cryptocurrency for both capital gains as well as for transactions. And from a global scale, of course, as mentioned just now, we see a lot of movements both in global countries, globally from the US to China, in Singapore and this part of the region, and massive amount of movements categorically in the areas of DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance, NFTs for non-fungible tokens, or even, as what we all hear, upcoming really, really hot in the Metaverse space. As a final trend that I would cover is that we are seeing something that's really interesting, that previously we see blockchain that's very much delineated as a core technology, and we see cryptocurrency very much as a specific asset class or a specific industry by itself. One of the interesting trends that we see more and more so is the convergence between the traditional as well as the digital assets economy, and a large convergence between the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. And I would very loosely cover it in three core aspects of the commerce industry, the finance industry, as well as how technology has converged within these two key areas itself. And if we cover the first topic of commerce, we see that NFT space has been growing tremendously. And we've been seeing a lot of uptake and traction over the last number of years. It is, to a certain extent, a really, really new industry that really has got more and massive uptake and traction, probably over just the last 2 years or 3 years or so. It's been around for a longer time, but only the last 2 or 3 years do you see a massive uptake of NFTs itself. And many people look at NFTs, and it has very much evolved over the last number of years, starting, of course, with what some people might be more familiar with, like CryptoKitties as a game, moving towards collectibles, where one of the most expensive NFTs artwork actually sold for more than $90 million, right? Which was a collage of different art pieces that's been placed together. And moving forward, we look at NFTs that's being sold more and more, going up towards the hundreds of millions of dollars mark, right? That is basically very much in the news. And NFTs can, of course, be utilized in many other areas, not just in areas of games, not just in areas of collectibles, but moving forward, people are looking at how they're able to utilize NFTs even for voting, how NFTs will be able to represent some forms of fractionalized based models that actually represents a title deed, and how that title deed eventually can be fractionalized. Like the collectibles market has been around for the last few hundred years, will continue to be around for next 100 years, and more so with a digital format to be able to better frictionalizedly arrange, right, for that proof of collectible. Then more so in the future, we do see a specific uptake. And of course, the next topic in the areas of commerce that we talk about is the Metaverse, which is a really, really hot topic. And a really interesting fact is that even if we don't talk about so-called all the upcoming trends within space, we talk about what we term as leading indicators. If today on the right-hand side, you see two graphs, and if you were to compare the install base of the PlayStation 5 versus the install base and the demand for AR and VR headsets, we're able to see some interesting figures. Just in year 2021, the PlayStation 5 install base estimates around 16 million units. And the AR VR headsets install base has very much grown tremendously and has hit more than 16 million units just in the year 2021. We see an increasing uptake of people demanding for AR and VR headsets. And this is just an indicator to very much show us how many more people from a mass adoption basis or from a higher adoption basis are starting to adopt, right, VR and AR headsets and starting to move into that specific curve of adoption itself. And if we split it up towards three large trends in the commerce sector, I'll very much talk about areas of NFTs, the Metaverse, as well as commerce, being some pivotal points where blockchain and cryptocurrencies are coming together. In the second component of finance, I would define 3 areas which I think would be massive movements of how the traditional as well as the digital assets economy has come together. In the financial sector, one of the areas that I think has very much high impact is the areas of fractionalization and tokenization, where now people are able to take real estates and be able to represent that not just as selling off one large real estate, they're able to fractionalize it to smaller parts and have micro investors invest into one small part of the entire real estate rather than the entire real estate itself. If a building is worth $1 billion, I'm able to fractionalize it to 1 billion parts. And through that itself, I would then be able to allow parties to actually participate in smaller parts itself. We do have the DeFi movement that multiple different parties still wishing to remain anonymous, be able to partake in DeFi. At the same time, a huge movement both in the cryptocurrency as well as the digital currency space. Just in Indonesia itself, we see a massive growth in cryptocurrency assets, where just 1 year back, transactions has very much hit $4 billion and has grown to more than 60 billion in 2021 itself. And this would be some of the 3 core impacts that I believe would be able to impact the financial sector. As a last note, very much due to time, and I'll share very, very quickly, in the areas of technology and where the traditional as well as cryptocurrency space is coming together, it's very much in 3 core areas that I believe would very much impact the space. And we talk about areas of digital identity, where people now are able to have identity and they would be able to have all their data sets revolving around that. We have data validation where blockchain would be able to bring forth trust, transparency, and traceability. Storage and data mobility, where now we're able to better control the security of information, at the same time where we have a specific standard of how information is able to flow with the right permission rights. And of course, importantly, automation as well as smart contracts, where we're now able to remove the middleman and we're able to automate certain processes as well as items that we believe should actually be automated in that particular sense. As a last note, if there's one key thing, I personally believe that blockchain would bring massive amount of impact to the world. To me, I believe strongly that blockchain would be to trust as what internet has been to information. And that's why I personally believe that blockchain would bring massive value within the space itself. As a final note, if you would like to find out how ready your corporation is in terms of AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, or even digital transformation readiness, we have done a simple questionnaire that gives you a traffic light system and a scoring to say, where are you in your journey of adopting AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, or digital transformation? And at the same time, if you wish to adopt blockchain, AI, or cybersecurity, or just digitally transform, what would be some of the areas that you would need to look out for in order for you to get better ready? You can scan the QR code or go to our website to be able to identify your readiness. And if you wish to have a copy or set of the presentation, please do let myself know as well. Thank you very much for the sharing session, as well as the organizers for this time to be able to share with everyone on my passion of blockchain. And if you would like to link up or reach out to us, be able to find us at VisionGroup.co or reach out to me on LinkedIn at Huijie Lim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lim, for your good, amazing presentation. Oke, everybody, tidak terasa waktu sudah menunjukkan pukul 12:15. Kita break terlebih dahulu, dipersilakan untuk yang mau istirahat, untuk yang menjalankan sholat zuhur, dan juga nanti dilanjutkan di pukul 2 PM Jakarta Time atau GMT +7. Oke, nanti di pukul 2 kita kembali lagi ke acara selanjutnya, yaitu sesi Fireside Chat Session. Okay, see you all. Goodbye.